UFC Vegas 59, Draftkings has released the salaries so we can take our first look. You can call me Kunith. Let's make some money this week. Last week, we got destroyed. We were right in theory about a couple of things. We knew we needed the Pavlovich-Lewis winner. We knew not to play Michael Morales. We knew only 3 underdogs would win. But we were wrong about everything else. But that's okay. It's in the past. That's a pay-per-view. This is a fight night card. This is where you and I make money. And we've got a nice slate on our hands this week. I do think it's a bit favorite heavy, but I do think from a DraftKings perspective, there are some clear directions for us to go. Now, one thing that we could be absolutely clear on this week is Terrance McKinney up at 9,500. He's fighting Erick Gonzales this week. You don't need me to tell you that Terrance McKinney is going to win this fight.
Well, obviously.
The question is, do we play him on DraftKings at his price? Again, last week, Michael Morales failed to break 100 DraftKings points, priced right at the same 9,500, and as a result wasn't on the optimal lineup. We talked about him having to break 130 DraftKings points or so to be viable last week, considering the favorites were going to dominate, and they largely did. This card seems like one where we're also going to have a lot of favorites, so you look at Terrance McKinney and think, is he going to score 120, 130 DraftKings points? Terrance McKinney might just do that. He has 5 knockouts on his record, 4 of which have come in under a minute, and the other one came at a minute 12 in the first round. Erick Gonzales is coming off of a knockout loss to Jim Miller, so you do the math. What's going to happen here? Well, Terrance McKinney probably comes out, lands a big punch, finishes this guy inside the first round, and possibly inside the first minute, which would give him a quick win bonus on DraftKings of 25 points. So T-Rex could definitely go out there and score over 125 DraftKings points like he did in his UFC debut, and let's say that Erick Gonzales was able to hang on a little bit longer, he's still going to grapple him to death, he's going to ground and pound, he's probably going to find a submission, and you're looking at a situation where he still probably breaks 100 points. I'm going to have 100% Terrance McKinney this week, also because I could see a lot of the fights going the distance this week. I think he's going to be an outlier in terms of scoring. I don't know what the odds are in Terrance McKinney round 1, but whatever it is, we're taking it. The pick for me is Terrance McKinney by knockout. Next at 9,300, we have Michal Oleksiejczuk. He's fighting Sam Alvey this week. A lot of talk about Sam Alvey being cut if he loses this fight, and that would make sense considering he hasn't won a fight in over 4 years, but I'm telling you, man, Sam Alvey, he can't be cut. He's got to be good. After this kind of run that he's on, there's no way. There's no way. He must know something that Dana doesn't want anybody else to know. Sam Alvey at this point has more job security than the President of the United States. Oleksiejczuk has really good output for the division, great chin, which he showed us in his last fight against Dustin Jacoby, and he has power. Sam Alvey at this point is physically shot, very slow, doesn't seem to have a strong will to win, and his legendary durability is beginning to fade. Since 2018, he's been knocked down 5 times in 8 fights, all losses. The power and the durability of Sam Alvey were always the things that made him fun to watch, but those attributes, they've left him by now, and I don't see where he wins this fight. What I can see happening is Alvey surviving the 15 minutes and losing a decision, and that would actually limit the scoring potential for Oleksiejczuk. So we should keep that in mind when we're building lineups throughout the week, but the pick for me is still going to be Oleksiejczuk, and it's going to be by knockout. I like the younger fighter here. I think Sam Alvey's just cooked, but he's not going to be cut. Don't cut Sam. Next at 9,100, we have Cory McKenna. Off the bat, she has no business being this expensive on DraftKings against anybody, but she's fighting Miranda Granger this week, and I think the odds should be closer than where they are. And I say that because McKenna is giving up a ton of size here, 4 inches in height, nearly 10 inches in reach. Cory McKenna's best win, as you can see on the screen right here, Kay Hansen, which in hindsight really doesn't mean that much. And her most recent fight is a loss against Elise Reed, where she was able to get takedowns, but she wasn't able to keep her there. Elise Reed has no get-up game. So at first glance, I'm thinking there's value here on Miranda Granger, but there's not. Miranda Granger has no get-up game. She can't get up.
Help! I've fallen and I can't get up.
She likes to play her jiu-jitsu. She's willing to accept bottom position, and I think that we're going to see Cory McKenna rack up a lot of takedowns and control time this week. I think that Cory McKenna gets a takedown inside of every round, and being the smaller fighter in this matchup might actually help her with her wrestling. I think the most likely outcome in this fight is Cory McKenna by decision, so how does it look for us on DraftKings? Well, McKenna has decent output, and again, there is wrestling here. The control time, maybe not so much, but that could also be a good thing this week that could lead to more takedowns takedowns. And if she's able to maintain control on the ground, she can rack up control time, maybe land some ground and pound. So I expect this fight to be one-way traffic for Cory McKenna, and for that reason, I could see her scoring north of 90 points. Obviously, she's going to go under-owned at this price point in this division, so this is somebody that you definitely want to keep an eye on throughout the week. The pick for me in this fight is Cory McKenna by decision. Next at 9,000, we have Jamal Hill. He's our main event favorite. He's fighting Thiago Santos this week. There's a lot to like about Jamal Hill in this matchup. He's younger, taller, faster. He's taken far less damage. He's got momentum. And this might be a hot take, but I fully believe that Jamal Hill would knock out Jiri Prochazka, and I think that Jamal Hill is our champion inside the next 18 to 24 months, depending how scheduling shakes out. He has some of the cleanest boxing in the division. He has really good power, as we've seen, and he's also been getting better the longer that he's been in the UFC. On the other side, you have Thiago Santos, who was a monster not too long ago. And he still is, don't get me wrong, but the man is cursed. He's cursed with a crazy highlight reel, a competitive fight with Jon Jones, and being jacked. Because for those reasons, he's stuck fighting the absolute best of the best, like Jon Jones, Jan Blachowicz, Glover Teixeira, Alexander Rakic, Magomed Ankalaev, and he's doing this while being way beyond his prime. He's also had some terrible lower body injuries, mostly as a result of that Jon Jones fight. You see footage of him learning how to walk again, and now he's got a full ride scholarship to Touch 'em Up University, and Professor Sweet Dreams is going to give the man issues. The output from Hill is going to overwhelm Santos this week, and I think the big looping punches that Thiago normally tries to return fire with are going to leave openings for Hill to counter. I see Jamal Hill knocking out Thiago Santos in either the second or third round this week, and it would really surprise me if there was any other result. When you're playing DraftKings, a lot of people are going to get here, as they should, but it is scary considering that Hill is not going to wrestle. We might not see an early finish this week in this fight because Thiago Santos notoriously is good at slowing down the pace of fights. Obviously, people are worried about his power as well, so you might see a situation where Jamal Hill only scores 87 points with a knockout in the third or fourth round. But the pick for me in this fight is Jamal Hill. It's going to be by knockout, and if you played him on DraftKings, I think that makes a lot of sense still. Now, before our next fighter, please, if you haven't already, like the video, subscribe to the channel, comment something for the algorithm. You know how the algorithm works. Next at 8,900, we have Zach Pauga. He's going to be making his UFC debut this week against Muhammad Usman. Both these guys will be making their debut in the UFC for the finale of The Ultimate Fighter that no one watches. I like Zach Pauga to win here. He's undefeated. He fights out of elevation, so you know he's going to be coming into this fight in good shape. And the biggest reason why I like him is because I don't like Muhammad Usman. I do not like him, Sam. I do not like the other Usman. Marty's brother looked terrible in his recent fight on PFL against Brandon Sales, who was piecing him up from range, dropped him with a couple of punches, choked him unconscious. Oscar, I said choked him unconscious. Play the Cat Williams clip. They love it. Oscar, I said choked him unconscious. Play the Cat Williams clip. What do you mean you don't have the Cat Williams clip? We don't repeat clips. I don't even think that's true. Play the damn clip. Well, then find it. Then play it. Okay. So I really don't have confidence in the Usman side this week. He does have decent power, but defensively he leaves a lot to be desired. I expect the Pauga camp to come in with a good game plan this week. For DraftKings, he probably goes under-owned due to name value or lack thereof. So I don't see him scoring that many points. I think he fights safe this week. I think he wins rounds with volume, but nothing crazy in terms of fantasy scoring. The pick for me in this fight is Zach Pauga by decision. Next at 8,800, we have Sergey Spivak. He's going to be fighting Augusto Sakai this week. This is one-way traffic for the polar bear in this fight. He's going to get takedowns every round. He probably finishes this fight. As a fan, I like Augusto Sakai. He bangs.
I do.
He eventually gets brutally finished, but he comes to fight despite being chinny. He doesn't mind a brawl. I think if they were striking primarily, I think Sakai I'd give him the slight edge, but that won't be the case because Spivak's a wrestler and Sakai can't stop a takedown. Sakai was getting ragged by Alistair Overeem, and you see in the heavyweight division that the guys are so big on top and on bottom that the guys in bottom position kind of just turtle on their back. You see that a lot in heavyweight MMA. Fighters have a hard time getting up, and if Spivak is on top of Sakai, he's not getting up. For DraftKings, Sergey Spivak is one of the safest plays on the entire slate, but he also does have that high scoring upside, and we've seen it in the past. So he's perfect for your cash games. He's definitely tournament viable as well. I really like Sergey Spivak at 8,800 this week. and the pick for me is Spivak inside the distance. Next at 8,700, we have Bryan Battle. He's going to be fighting Takashi Sato this week. I love me some Bryan Battle. I haven't picked against him, and he always pays off his salary. He's like that one friend you had growing up who would come over, never broke anything, cleaned up after themselves. That's Bryan Battle. Takashi Sato is like that one friend you had growing up that Gunnar Nelson used to take down at will. I expect Bryan Battle to do the same thing this week. I think he'll entertain the striking in spots, but eventually he's going to start shooting for takedowns, and they will come. Takashi Sato has KO power, so the threat is always there, but there are two reasons why the knockout won't happen for him in this fight. First is game planning, path of least resistance. Like we talked about with Mark Diakese a few weeks ago, he knows the only trouble that he's in is if he's striking, so he's going to avoid it. Also, and this may be a hotter take, I don't think we ever see Bryan Battle knocked out. At least not in the next 5 years. You heard it here first. Battle is also coming down to welterweight, where he's going to have that new generation size to him. And I say that because 170 is going through kind of like a generational shift right now. You've got guys like Bryan Battle, Ian Gary, Kevin Holland, Hamzat Chimaev. Recently we saw Michael Morales, Shavkat Rakhmonov. In a few years, the top of welterweight is going to be entirely over 6 feet tall across the board. Like the top 5 guys are all going to be over 6 feet tall. So I like Bryan Battle here. I think a second round submission for him this week makes a lot of sense. It's going to pay off his price tag on DraftKings as well. The pick for me is Bryan Battle by submission. Next at 8,600, we have Josh Quinlan. He's making his UFC debut this week against Jason Witt. Right now, he's around -200, -220 at the time of recording this. He's only 8,600 on DraftKings, 100% finish rate, and Jason Witt is chinny. And I really want to call a trap line here. I want to think that Jason Witt represents a massive step up in competition. I want to think that Jason Witt should blitz this kid, get him wrestling early, put a pace on him, drag him into deep water. I feel like that's exactly how this fight could go. I could also see Josh Quinlan putting him out in the first few minutes. So I'm torn because this fight really does feel like a trap. UFC debut, nervous energy, but Jason Witt only looks good against guys who can't defend takedowns. So as boring as it is, I'm going to go with another favorite here because I truly think it's the best choice. The pick for me is Josh Quinlan by knockout. Next at 8,500, we have a legend, a young legend in Vicente Luque. I feel like Vicente Luque has got to be on everybody's like top 5 of fighters who haven't won a championship. I feel like Vicente Luque's got to be on your list. He's fighting Jeff Neal this week. This was a surprise to me. Not the fight. I think the fight is awesome, but the way that I felt about the fight was the surprise. My mind at first says Vicente Luque easily wins this fight, but now I'm not so sure. I think the exact opposite could happen. I think the unimaginable could take place in this matchup. I think that Jeff Neal has a chance of being the first man ever to knock out Vicente Luque, as crazy as that sounds. Vicente Luque has crazy output, awesome talent, a ton of experience, but he does get into brawls. He takes a ton of punishment, but he eats it like Drew Dober, so it's hard to fault the technique. But I think with this matchup, we do have to look at some times where that brawling got him in a little bit of trouble, like for example, when he got his bell rung against Tyron Woodley. Wonderboy dropped him. He went to war with Bryan Barberena and was dropped in that fight, and I think that if Luque stands in the pocket with Jeff Neal, his chin is going to get caught. I think a ton of people are going to be on Luque this week, and it's for good reason. The dude is a monster. He is a legend. He has a granite chin. He has a ton of finishes. But for me, the leverage, the underdog, the hands of steel, I'm picking Jeff Neal in this fight to win by knockout. Next at 8,400, we have Ariane Lipski. She's going to be fighting Priscila Cachoeira, or should I say Priscila Cash as an underdog this week. Lipski has had some mixed results in the UFC, going 3-4. In her most recent fight, she did beat Mandy Bohm. And by beat, I mean beat her up. She dropped her a few times. She looked great in that fight, but we also know that Mandy Bohm isn't really UFC caliber, and I think the jury is still out on Lipski. She wants to stand and bang with her Muay Thai style, but Cachoeira has power. She has a really good chin as well. We saw her cash as an underdog in her last fight, which was controversial with Ji Yeon Kim, but she did come out on the winning side, and she fought really hard, especially late in that fight. I think her gas tank is going to hold up, as she showed us in her last fight that she could go a hard 15 minutes. I favor the durability and the power on the side of Cachoeira. I will take her to win this fight by decision. She She may even come up with a knockout at some point, so might be one of these sneaky value plays that I run with this week. The pick for me in this fight is Priscila Cachoeira, though, by decision. Next at 8,300, we have Juliana Miller. She's going to be fighting Brogan Walker this week. I like Miller this week. I think she's going to be able to get Walker down to the mat and eventually submit her. She doesn't have as much experience as Walker, but what she does have is a grappling advantage, and she goes for these awkward, weird takedowns that are hard to prepare for, and I think that's going to serve her very well this week. On the other side with Brogan Walker, you're going to get a very simple, very generic approach. She's a generalist versus a specialist in this matchup, and at this level of women's MMA, I will take the specialist every time. Give me Juliana Miller this week by submission, extremely sneaky on DraftKings at 8,300. And then lastly, we have a matchup here with Mayra Bueno Silva. She's going to be fighting Stephanie Egger this week. For DraftKings, Bueno Silva let us down hard last time out. We played the leverage game. She was priced all the way up at 9,300 and then put together a 66-point performance. Abysmal.
Inconceivable!
Now she's going to be fighting Stephanie Egger this week, and honestly, I think this is another opportunity for us to look at an underdog in this spot. Mayra Bueno Silva is a brawler. She likes to brawl, she likes to stand in the pocket, and that's going to open her up to that clinch. On the other side with Stephanie Egger, I think that she's going to be able to toss her all over the place. I expect multiple takedowns for Stephanie Egger this week, because if Mayra Bueno Silva is going to do that, and that's basically going to invite Stephanie Egger into the clinch, she's going to get a head and arm throw, she's going to toss her a couple times, and she's probably going to find a submission at some point. I think the women's fights on these cards are going to be awesome this week, and I think 2 of them are going to finish, and one of them might be complete one-way traffic. Don't be surprised if the ladies show up on the optimal lineup this week. We picked Stephanie Egger to win her last fight against Jessica Rose Clark for a similar reason. We just knew that once the fight got into the clinch, she would be able to do what she does, get her throws, find an arm, get out of there. So the pick for me in this fight is Stephanie Egger. It's going to be by submission, and at 8,000 looks like a very strong play early in the week. And I'll quickly just review the plays for you again at 8,000 and below, but before I do, again, make sure you like the video, subscribe to the channel, comment for the algorithm. At 8,000 and below, we have a couple of options. We have Stephanie Egger, who we just talked about. I think that she wins. Brogan Walker, I'm really not too impressed with. I don't think that she's going to win this fight, and if she does, I don't feel like she scores that many points. Priscila Cachoeira, I don't think she's a must roster by any means, but I do think that she is live for a finish at some point. I would not be surprised. Hands of Steel Jeff Neal, I think, is going to break so many people's ankles this week. I think so many people are just going to overlook Jeff Neal, think that he's done after those 2 losses and the close fight with Ponzinibbio. But beware, Jeff Neal does hit very, very hard, and he is younger than he looks. Takashi Sato, I'm not interested. This man is dead to me. He's actually on the burger list. He was unofficially on the burger list, but he's officially on there now. Augusto Sakai, I love him, but I mean, this is a chin that has seen better days, I'll tell you that. Muhammad Fake Newsman, I'm really not that interested. Thiago Santos, not with that full ride scholarship to touch him up university. Miranda Granger is actually interesting because of her length, because of her jiu-jitsu. She could end up surprising us this week, but I don't think that's the most likely outcome by any means. Sam Alvey, may he never die. Unfortunately, Erick Gonzales possibly does die this week. Now, those are our early predictions. If you've gotten to this point in the video, thank you so much for watching. I really do appreciate it. Make sure you like the video, subscribe to the channel, and I will see you later in the week.